Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Mintle. Hey, thanks for listening to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. Faith radio podcasts are only possible because of your support. Thanks for giving and for sharing with a friend.
Doing life together, reaching out with hope, encouraging one another, each step along the road. You and I can make everything a little better, doing life together.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Mintle, the relationship doctor, and I'm here along with my co-host, the other Dr. Mintle, my husband, Norm. And every weekend we're here, we're doing life together, and we're so glad that you've joined us.
Right. Just a second. I got to fix this mic.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Hey, did you get that book idea I sent to you? I sent I sent a bunch of stuff to you, and
Okay.
And Mimi told me that she really likes your post on Facebook. I don't remember what she was talking about. And Wanjing, did you get the remember the what was it?
Okay, well, hello, too, over here.
Hi. Oh, hi. Yes.
And it seems like you're all over the place. Well, actually, you are. And that's because our show is going to be on a topic today that most all of us are familiar with, and that is ADHD.
Which I was just acting.
You were demonstrating.
to show.
You were demonstrating that. Now, I know you don't have ADHD, but
Thank you.
we were trying to make a point. When you do, conversations can go all over the place due to what you just experienced, which was a lack of focus.
Right.
Now, I need to say, if somebody doesn't, for some reason, know what ADHD is, it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And we'll talk a little bit more about specifically what that is.
And I understand that it affects about 6% of the adult population in our country. That seems like such a small number, but when you do the math, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. Yeah, it is.
And it affects, as a consequence, their relationships as adults.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, I'm just used to hearing about children being diagnosed or kids in school. Oh, that kid's got ADHD. But you and I both work with college students, and we do see a lot of it in the young adult population.
Well, and that's because, Norm, in order to have the diagnosis, there is a pattern of this that develops before the age of 12. So a lot of times people are missed with the diagnosis when they're children, and they somehow sort of accommodate themselves during school or in their, play groups or whatever they're in. And then by the time they get to adulthood or even in college, or especially if they get to grad school and they haven't been properly diagnosed, it really starts to show up.
Okay. So if you've ever lived with, know someone, are related to someone with ADHD, you probably need to hear this because I want to set the stage from a spiritual standpoint at the beginning of the show today. The Bible doesn't mention this at all, clearly,
Right.
but it does command us to love one another and as a demonstration of the fruit of the Holy Spirit who lives in us. So I just wanted to say that from the beginning because so many people may have this and so many people may be frustrated, and God calls us to love regardless.
Yeah, and we're going to really focus our efforts in this show on the relationship aspects and how that does become a little bit frustrating for people who are living with someone with ADHD. But I want to make it really clear that this is something that happens in the brain. The brain is just different. It's rewired. It's a different type of wiring than somebody without it. So it's not something the person can just by willpower control.
Just knock it off.
Yeah, it's an actual difference in the brain. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that the brain functions a little bit differently than somebody without this particular type of disorder.
So I think we've all heard ADD, ADHD. What's the difference?
So the ADD, which was attention deficit disorder back in the day, that's a term from the 80s.
Oh.
And so it's just kind of kept up. And when they revise the psychiatric terms and they put, as they do different versions of this diagnostic and statistical manual, which is where this is diagnosed out of, over the years, they refined it to ADHD instead of ADD. So when you hear both of them, it's just an old term that sometimes people use. It's not really the up-to-date term.
Got it.
So there are three basic types of ADHD. So we're going to talk about the inattentive type, and that is the one where people are more forgetful, disorganized, a lack of focus. They're not able to attend as well. And this one, especially in girls when they're younger, goes unnoticed because girls can just kind of sit in a classroom and be really quiet and don't say too much, but they might be really struggling with their attention, and maybe the teacher doesn't know that. So there's an inattentive type. The one that's easier to see is the hyperactive impulsive subtype, which is where the H comes from in ADHD.
Okay.
But that's the person who's very restless and impulsive, and they're moving. They always say they're moving like they have a motor in them. They're just pacing, moving, and restless.
But that sounds like every toddler.
Well, yeah, but you have to watch for a lot of other things to make that diagnosis.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And then there's a combination of the two where there's a combined form, which has both the inattention and the hyperactivity and impulsivity. So that's their third type. So we've got an inattentive type, which is harder to sometimes see. You might have a child and think, wow, they're forgetting their assignments all the time, or they're losing things, or I gave them a command and they seem to they didn't remember it, they're forgetting. The hyperactive one, a little bit more, they have trouble sitting in their seat in school. They're up, they're moving, they're pacing, they have trouble sitting still, that kind of thing. And then the combination of those two.
Okay. So when you hear people say they hope they grow out of their ADHD, is that even possible?
Well, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So that means...
Help me.
Yeah, well, that means that there is something going. Neuro is a term for neuro. You heard neurology, in the brain, in the mind,
Right.
in the head. And so when you know that it's neuro, there's a developmental difference in the brain. So typically you don't grow out of it. You might get better at accommodating it. You might have a job, for instance, where you can focus your own time, your own way, and you wouldn't notice it as much as if you were in a job where things had to get done on a deadline, for instance. So it doesn't just go away. Some people have fewer symptoms as they age because of this accommodation, but some adults continue to have major symptoms that interfere with their daily functioning. And depending, like I said, on the job you have or the organization in your family life, like you may have somebody in your family who's very organized. Maybe your spouse is super organized, so the family runs a little bit smoother. But if you had two people together, both of them had ADHD, you might find the problems are a little bit more challenging because both of you are having trouble with organization and time management and getting things done and remembering things. That's part of the difficulty.
All right. So we know what it looks like in children. Is it different in adults?
Yes. So sometimes it's missed. The hyperactivity may just show up as a feeling of constant restlessness. The person may constantly tap their feet,
Oh, I know someone like that.
play with a pencil, fidget. And in adults, hyperactivity may decrease, but struggles with impulsiveness, restlessness, difficulty paying attention. Those are the ones that really continue.
So from childhood to adulthood,
Right.
those ones are constant. Okay. Give us some examples of what it looks like in adulthood in addition to that.
So if you were dealing with the impulsive type of behaviors, maybe spending money randomly or spending impulsively, the urge to buy something and then later on going, oh, don't really have the money for that, or I should have thought that through. One of them is driving recklessly. Another one is the person may say what is on their mind without really thinking through whether it might offend or hurt some person. So that's an impulsive type of behavior.
Those are the people we say don't have a filter.
Yeah, or just should wait before
Yeah.
they speak.
Press
Pause
yeah.
before you speak. Forgetting things, like I said, struggling with time management. Those are really two of the big ones.
Okay.
Time management and forgetting things.
Okay. If I had to guess, I think I'd imagine that one of the biggest complaints in a relationship with someone who has ADHD is that forgetfulness part.
Yeah, because you think, well, why didn't they, why aren't they doing what I asked them to do? Or why did they forget? It was so important for me to have them bring home dinner and they forgot to do dinner.
They're so irresponsible.
Yeah, so you attribute this negative attribute to something that is really a struggle without some help. And it happens with, regular tasks around the house, like taking out the garbage, even picking up kids from school, or, filing paperwork. A lot of paperwork in adulting you have to do.
That's true.
And then, of course, the losing or forget things that they regularly use, like my keys, I forgot the phone number, I forgot these important paper.
Where are my glasses?
I know, I do that. Even though I've not been diagnosed with ADHD. I'm pretty organized. I do forget where I put my glasses a lot. But they also may have trouble with self-motivation. So there's a lot of procrastination. Again, not because they don't want to do it necessarily, but just because of
The wiring in their brain.
the wiring
Yeah,
again.
I guess so. Okay, I'm thinking of an adult that you and I both know who has been diagnosed, and he can stay focused for hours at a time. How is that possible?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If a topic interests them, they may focus on it completely, like they're all in, shutting everything out. And the typical response that I hear from the family members is, well, if the task is something I'm really interested in, I have no problem. But, they're saying that their son or their daughter is saying that. But then if it's not something that really interests them, they just can't get themselves to work on it, even though they know they should. So that's an issue.
Well, I think we all get bored, and when we're not interested in something, we don't pay attention to it. So that explanation seems to make some sense to me, that ADHD is more than just dealing with a willpower issue.
Yes, it's not a willpower issue. It's a problem of brain chemistry.
Okay.
One of the mysteries of ADHD is the fact that all those with the disorder tend to have a few specific activities or tasks in which they perform very well, effectively utilizing their what we call the executive function in the brain. That's where you can focus. And they're unable to do that with other kinds of things that they don't see as important.
Okay, so can you help me with executive function? Tell me a little bit more.
Executive functioning skills help you get things done. These are the skills that are controlled by an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. And the brain struggles to regulate its own activity if a person has ADHD. So as we've been saying, it's just wired differently. There are different levels of neurotransmitters, differences in a part of the brain called the default network, where they're made daydream. That's where that takes place. Activity, they may do that more often. They may find themselves just kind of wandering and daydream off. Yeah. So executive functions help you manage time. So let's think about this with ADHD. Manage time, pay attention, switch focus, plan and organize, remember details, avoid saying something that might be the wrong thing, do things based on your experience, and multitask.
All of which you listed as difficulties.
Those are understimulated in the
right.
brain of somebody with ADHD. Okay. So it's just a very different way of handling things.
So does ADHD run in families? Can you inherit this?
It's what we call highly heritable, so yes.
Okay. So I can see how this would cause a lot of problems in relationships, especially if you don't understand these issues that we're talking about.
Right. That's it. If you don't understand it, you can get in a cycle where the non-ADHD partner complains, nags, and becomes increasingly resentful, while the ADHD partner feels judged, misunderstood, gets defensive, and pulls away. In the end, nobody's happy.
Well, we're going to be happy right after this break, because we're going to talk to you more about how adult ADHD impacts relationships. Be right back.
The other day, I was cut off the road by a driver. Everything in me wanted to yell, "Hey, watch out!" But I restrained myself, knowing that yelling at the driver would not do so much good, and it wasn't the best way to deal with my anger. Anger easily rises up in most of us. Anger, while a natural emotion, needs to be dealt with in the right way. The Bible tells us, "Be angry, but do not sin." So what is the biblical way to handle anger? Well, this is a question I answer in my short and easy book to read, Breaking Free from Anger and Unforgiveness. That small book has sold over 130,000 copies because of how practical and helpful it is to everyday living. So if you want to be angry but not sin, practice what Scripture teaches. Breaking Free from Anger and Unforgiveness is available on my website, drlindamintle.com, and online where books are sold.
And this is Dr. James Cribbs, pain physician and co-author of Living Beyond Pain. Psalm 13, 1 and 2 is often the cry of the person in pain. How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? The psalmist concludes that he is not forgotten and that his suffering matters to God. God will sustain him and God will sustain you.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. I'd love to remind you that you can follow her on her social media platforms, X and Instagram, at Dr. Linda Mintle, Dr. Linda Mintle, and on Facebook at Dr. Linda Mintle, author and speaker. Go to her website, drlindamintle.com, and that's where you'll find all the information about her books, her blogs. You just get to know your own personal Dr. Linda. You can listen to our podcast on myfaithradio.com or on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Dr. Linda Mental Podcast or go to myfaithradio.com. Take us with you. Share us. Give this to your friends. So back to the topic at hand, in terms of relationships, it seems to me that the person with ADHD should recognize and acknowledge the impact that their brain, which is different, has on their partner. Does that make sense?
Yes, and if you're the one with ADHD, it is important to recognize how, now listen to this, how your untreated symptoms affect your partner, because you can get help with this and you can get treatment with this. But if you're not treating it, it's going to have an impact. And if you're the non-ADHD partner, consider how your nagging and criticism makes your partner feel. Instead of labeling your partner irresponsible, recognize their forgetfulness, the lack of follow-through as symptoms of untreated ADHD. So remember, symptoms aren't character traits.
Oh, good.
Okay?
Yes.
And it would do you well to recognize that nagging usually arises from feeling really frustrated and because you're stressed, not because your partner is unsympathetic and avoidant.
Although it probably feels that way.
It feels that way if you don't understand what you're dealing
Right.
with. That's why there have been books written on couples with ADHD and helping each other understand that, they just approach life a little differently. And there's so many positives with people I know with ADHD. They're very creative.
Very.
Can really get on a task that they enjoy and really stay with it. So it's just a difference in the way people are wired.
So if you're concerned that you have a partner or that you might be someone who has ADHD, I'm going to guess that Dr. Linda's going to prescribe a diagnosis by a mental health professional.
Yes, it's so important because ADHD can be mistaken for other things like anxiety. So somebody that's forgetting something, Norm, maybe they're just highly, highly anxious. And that's why they're forgetting, because they're walking around with a lot of social anxiety or something. So you really have to do a complete evaluation by a trained, licensed mental health professional. Usually a clinical psychologist is the one who makes that diagnosis. They do some testing. They ask a lot of questions with surveys and questionnaires for family members, take a lot of history, some psychological testing. All of that is good. So I would get it formally diagnosed to make sure.
We know that there's a percentage of folks in the world who just don't want to take medicines or medications, but meds do help in this case, right?
Yeah, and multiple controlled trials have shown that well-tailored treatment with approved medications significantly improve ADHD for about 70 to 80% of those affected. Now, here's what I usually tell them, the patient. Some people want to try without it, see how they do, but it's a cornerstone of the treatment with adults. And research has shown that the medications definitely improve the symptoms. They help you pay attention, they help you concentrate, they help you control your impulses, and it's a game changer for a lot of people. The analogy I use, it's like you're looking at something that is really fuzzy and blurry. Take the meds, it's like putting glasses on. Suddenly you see it. And it's something you notice right away with the medication. You'll notice it's not something like some of the antidepressants where it takes a while it takes 4 to 6 weeks sometimes for those meds to really kick in. This you'll know right away because it's so different. It makes it so clearer to you.
I've heard, and I know you have many times, people say, that medicine just didn't work. But there are other kinds of medicines,
There are,
right?
and that is a really good point because there's one of the ADHD medications that bothers some people's stomach, and it takes away their appetite. And so you just have to work with the prescriber and say, here are the side effects, this is what's happening, and they can try some different types and work on it so that it's doable for you.
So what about therapy? Does that help too?
It does, and most people benefit from having some type of either psychological therapy or like a talk therapy or even coaching. So we've worked with people where they've done coaching with people with ADHD. And a helpful resource, and this is something I highly, highly recommend. They have so much on their website. It's a resource called CHADD, all caps, CHADD. So think about children and adults with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If you just go to CHADD, CHADD, tons and tons of help, resources. It's just a wonderful organization.
I think based on all the different programs you and I have done together about couples and families and relationships, I've just guess that if you're going to work on this, you need to work on it together as a couple,
Right.
because it takes both of you.
So let's just go through a couple of things that you can do. So one would be divide your task as a couple and then stick to them. So the non-ADHD partner may be more suited to handling the bills, maybe doing certain types of errands, while maybe the other one manages the children and cooking. I mean, it's just an example, but find out what you're good at,
Right.
and then divide the labor
Right.
based on your strengths.
Right, exactly. You know you're better at this. You know you can
Right.
focus on this, but not that. So make sure you're in agreement on sharing tasks. Okay, that's good. What else?
And then one of the things I think is really helpful is just schedule a weekly sit down as a couple and address the issues and say, how are we doing? Is this going well? Do we need to make some changes and shifts, and how are we doing this together? So just do a check-in.
Right. And then I would think it would be good to also say, how are we doing with this division of labor thing?
Yeah. Get back into the specifics of the chores and the responsibilities, and maybe you need to rebalance the workload. Like maybe one person is saying, it's just too much for me to do all the bills and do all the whatever else is on that list, and then you're doing this. So again, the reason you're doing this is because you want to make sure you're working together, you're not building resentment, you're not getting to the point where you feel like it's unfair or uneven, and not one person is shouldering, the bulk of the
Right.
responsibility.
If your children are old enough, should you involve them in this process?
Yeah, you could delegate some things to them. That would be really good to get them into that. And you can assign them chores. I don't think people do that as much anymore, do you?
I don't know. We all had chores.
I know. Like my brothers had to mow the lawn for the neighbors even. They had to go out without pay. Can you imagine?
Of course.
Just to be neighborly and to help the shut-ins in our neighborhood, they would go out and do that. Give your kids some chores. Assign them the chores. Now remember, if you have a child with ADHD and you give them 3 commands at a time, they're not going to remember them. So you can't say, I want you to go make your bed, then clean up your room, and then when you're done, go take the garbage out. That child will not remember that. So you just do one at a time. Right now, I'd like you to take the next 30 minutes, go up and clean your room.
That's smart.
When they're done, okay, now I want you to, because you have to give them a command one at a time because they'll forget.
Does that also work for your spouse?
Yes,
if
it does.
They have
That's why I brought it up.
Okay.
So, and if you're really struggling, maybe you pay for a cleaning service if you're really having trouble getting organized, or maybe you sign up for grocery delivery, or you set up, best thing would be some kind of automated bill payment to help yourselves.
Right, because that whole thing of paying bills is something easily forgotten.
Yeah. And
Or you
even when you're
dismiss
good
one.
at it and you have, it's still something you got to work on.
Yeah.
All right. Split up individual tasks if you need to. And if you're the non-ADHD partner, try to help develop a routine in your home. Try to set up some kind of external reminders. You can put lists up. You can put a dry erase board. You can put notifications on your phone. That's one of the biggest ones. Control the clutter, because if there's clutter all around you, people with ADHD have a hard time seeing through that. It's like the forest with the trees. Here's another example. It's like when I look at something, I would see the forest and the trees the same without the medication, probably with ADHD. But as soon as I put on the medication, those glasses, suddenly I see
A tree.
a tree in the forest. And that's why clutter just makes it much more difficult to see. And then ask the ADHD partner to repeat requests. And don't do it as a way of being, you have to hear that again.
Yeah.
Just say, oh yeah, I need to repeat it. This is something I need to do, so that they're remembering and they don't misunderstand. And then I think, Norm, because we're coming to the end of our time, I think it's really good for couples to pray together, stay spiritually connected, and continue to talk and pray and say, how are we doing? Check in with God and then check in with each other. That'll keep your heart soft.
Well, and I think that goes back to what I said at the very beginning of our program. Jesus commands us to love one another, even with ADHD in the family, and to have patience with one another.
Yeah.
So there's a biblical prescription here.
And we could add grace to that as well.
Right.
So in sum, learn more about ADHD and then work with a coach or a therapist, or just work together as a couple. This is not a disorder that has to derail your life. We have good treatments and good help available for anybody who has this issue. All right, well, that's all the time we have today. Many thanks to my co-host Norm Minto, who makes the show a conversation, and our technical producer Wan Jing Pu, and our editor Katie Sims Wilson. From all of us here at Faith Radio, hey, we'll talk to you again next weekend. In the meantime, remember, we're doing life together, and it's better when you don't have to do it alone.
Doing life together.
Hey, thanks for listening to this conversation from the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. These conversations are available because of your support. Become a supporter now at myfaithradio.com. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and share it with friends so we can live life to the fullest, walk confidently, and find healing and hope.